congratulations if you're in a roofing business, because 4 or 5 years ago was the plumber's time and the HVAC guy's time. They have not quite exhausted that run, but it's far slower now than it was, and roofing has taken that spot. So roofing is the category du jour of all private equity at the moment. So you're in a good spot.
All the data's great. As a number of you sit out in the audience and think about the path ahead, we're here to hopefully help give some guidance and some insight in terms of how the M&A process works and how you may want to go about thinking about your path ahead. I would tell you that there's this concept of culture, right, out there, and the reason you run a process from my perspective is that not every private equity group, to Jim's comments a couple of minutes ago, are gonna be a fit for you. You need to run an interview process. It's a two-way interview process. Get to know people, spend time with them, ask lots of questions, because you're going to be working alongside, as Chris Cunahan said, you're gonna get calls on Monday mornings, and you're gonna be dealing with these people for 3, 5, 7+ years into the future. And culture eats strategy for lunch.
Yeah, so I put these questions together. These are some of the better questions I've received on my end, and some pro tips in terms of kind of ways you can look at the answers from those and what that means for you. I won't go through all these. They're obviously, you can follow through later. Some of the ones I think are most interesting are, what are your specific capabilities? Like, what do you bring to the table as a partner? You'll find if you have a good business, there'll be a lot of interest in your business, and everyone's money is green, but what can they do to help ensure that rollover is that 3-4x return? We at Bertram, we have a 20-person software development, digital marketing, data science team. It's full-time in-house resource that just works with our portfolio companies. That's our model. It's a bunch of 20 and 30-year-olds from Google. We're based in the Bay Area. That's how we approach being a value-add partner, but that's not the only way. Folks have supplier relationships, have seasoned operators they can bring. So just make sure you understand what that is and what you're getting for it. And the second piece on that one, the last question there, is what additional capital will be available? If you want to be the platform and do acquisitions and have capital ready for you to go execute your plan, you want to make sure a partner has a deep enough pocket to support that. Oftentimes you'll hear about fundless sponsors, folks that are having to chase dollars for every deal. So really understand, how much committed capital do you have? If you were to do this deal, how much are you going to reserve to go chase acquisitions, and really understand that? And this is all in the context of you being the platform. If you are an add-on, so to Jim's presentation before, it's a different set of questions. What does it mean for me to be an add-on? How much autonomy am I going to have? Things like that. So these are just a sample. There's a whole lot more, and happy to sort of go through others down the road.
Prospective buyer diligence considerations. This is a wall of words. This is an industry that does have a lot, it's data rich. There's a lot of information inside these businesses. Two things. One, I would say it's why investors love it. They can dig in and they can really understand the operations and the metrics of the business. And two, there's a lot of levers you can pull to drive growth. It is not a one-trick pony. There's greenfielding, there's product expansion, there's all kinds of things that are at your disposal, marketing efficiency, et cetera, et cetera. And these are some of the things that investors will be focused on.
Yeah, and I think you're going to hear a lot, like people always ask what the multiple is, and it really comes down to these points as to what drives that multiple. Just to give you two to focus on and take home as like maybe projects. One is the word concentration. So go through your business and try to identify any significant points of concentration. So whether you have one marketing channel that drives all your customer acquisition, that is going to be perceived negatively by a potential investor. Do you have one supplier and risk of that supplier going away? Are you in a single market? Those sorts of things. Find any points of concentration in your business and just try to find ways to remove those, add a second, third option. And the second piece is growth. So everyone's focused on growth, but you really have to prove your growth. It's one thing to say, oh, we're going to open up 5 more markets, but if you've never done it, you're not going to get paid for it as if you had done a second and third market. If you think you can introduce new products, well, try introducing a second product and show that next investor that you've proven you can do it. So any kind of proof points you can create, case studies we call them, that demonstrate your ability to execute your plan, you're going to get paid for that a lot more than if you're just sort of selling a dream.
Last but not least, the process. And before you get into how do you run a sale process, I guess I would say everybody's loved sports quotes over the last couple of days, but one of the ones that has stuck with me since I was a kid playing sports is, failing to prepare is preparing to fail. And if you're going to run a really good M&A process, if everybody expects and has some level of value that they want for their business, Sometimes it's rational, sometimes it's not. Ultimately, you got to do the work long before you pick up the phone, long before you send any emails, long before you talk to a buyer. You got to do the work to prepare. And back to this being a data-rich industry, you got to metricize all the information. You got to metricize the performance of your team, your sales team. You got to metricize, branch locations. You got to metricize, your marketing efficiency by channel. It is it's a lot of work. So you wouldn't send your salespeople into a house to try to close a lead if you hadn't figured out how to generate a quality lead, if you hadn't trained that salesperson, if you hadn't armed them with really good sales content and a system of education. Same is true for an M&A process. You don't want to do it half-baked. So a lot of the content that you'll read on this slide is really about how to prepare ahead of time, picking good advisors, crunching data, making sure that your story is sound and that you've got a really good thesis to your potential investors and a vision as to where you want to take your business. The M&A process itself is very standardized. Once you do the work and you prepare, then everything runs like clockwork. My job is to try to pit the Tom Beerles of the world against each other, right? To try to create as much competitive tension as I can to try to drive the highest value.
And our job is to make sure you pick us as your partner.